Hey guys, Pedro here to tell you about the latest from Frozen Crown Call of the North out March 10th on Scarlet Records. This album has 10 tracks, 53 minutes in length, and this is the band's 4 full-length studio album. They are an Italian power metal band. As far as the design goes, I love how this record is put together. I love an album that has a sense of identity, an identity that doesn't change from song to song, that feels connected, that has this sense of balance and cohesiveness, that every single song is taking you in the same direction. Now, if you're not careful, an album like that could become super repetitive. You start to feel like every song sounds the same, every song is giving you the same, and there's not a lot of changes. The way they change that aspect, or the way they work towards changing that normal consequence of having an album this balanced, is by changing the intros of the tracks, allowing the songs to have different starting points almost every single time, adding a lot of backing vocals and choirs, making the guitars have more of a predominant role. These elements were enough to create subtle changes, but important changes that give an individuality to each and every single song, but that individuality is not enough to break away from the mold and from the collective strength of this record. As far as sound is concerned, this is a power metal album through and through. Obviously, there's classic heavy metal elements as well, but this is a very driven album, an album that has two main pillars, the vocals and the guitars. This is not to say that the bass and drums don't play an important part, because they do. I really enjoy both. I enjoy the drums a lot. They had great sound, great presence, helping ground this album, and a lot of the movement that the guitars have, they were propelled forward by that quality sound that's coming from the drums that really allow this record to have a magnificent footprint, a very large footprint. It's a very wide record. I wouldn't call it necessarily an epic sounding record, but it's a record that really comes at you with a much larger footprint than normal. Definitely larger footprint than some of their previous records that felt a little bit more volatile from track to track. They felt a little bit more diverse, a little bit more broken. This album is more consistent in the sound and in using those two pillars, guitars and vocals, as the main driving forces of the experience on every single song. The guitars on this album are phenomenal. Two great guitar players really working well together. Lots of layers, lots of texture, using one guitar sound to push the song forward, to give it momentum, to create the tempo of the song, while using the other one behind it to create melodies, to become a little bit more intricate, to give more life, more energy to the way these songs come across, making some of these tracks a little bit bigger without going into the next avenue of making them epic, because these songs they could be considered epic, but not in that symphonic way that one would expect. It's just an epic power metal sounding record because it has a lot of force, and the guitars and their duality offer those kind of elements. They offer that quality to the overall sound experience. And then you have an incredible vocal performance, one that feels a lot more comfortable, a lot more natural, a lot more organic in this sound that really drives it forward. You could be the greatest vocalist in the world, but you have to find the sound that allows you to be your best, that allows you to bring forward all the greatest elements that you have in your tone, in your range, in your delivery. This album is designed for a vocalist like this. You get the most out of it. This almost felt to me like the Italian version of Blind Guardian. It has so many Blind Guardian elements to it, but more power metal than what your traditional Blind Guardian sound is all about. And when you look at the vocal performance with the choirs, with the backing vocals, with the layers, with the texture, something that you normally see in a band like Blind Guardian, and these guys were able to find a way to make it their own and not necessarily copy what somebody else is doing. This is Frozen Crown. This record is what the band should be going forward. It's definitely their more mature record. It's definitely their more complete album, and I think it comes from understanding that you can have a single vision or a single idea of where the finish line is going to be for every single song. Changing the starting point of those tracks allow you to create diversity without changing the DNA of the record and what the overall experience is going to be for the listener. And because of that, this album has strength across every single element. Incredible record from start to finish. As far as favorite songs are concerned, outside of the singles, because the singles were outstanding, I picked 3 that I really feel like emphasize all the different nuances of this record. Starting off with Legion. Great opening as far as the song is concerned. The way it starts, it's like pedal to the metal, really aggressive track, and then it changes a little bit. It allows itself to become a little bit more vocally driven, and the melody behind it takes center stage. It slows down. It starts off pedal to the metal, and then the song slows down. But it slows down in a way that it's mid-tempo. It doesn't really feel like it's really slow. It doesn't feel like it's as fast as it started. Somewhere in the middle, but somewhere in the middle works really well for a song like this, a song that has a little bit of an anthem vibe to it. The guitars and drums work really well together. They complement each other, allowing the song to feel big, to feel thick, but not necessarily pushing it in that epic symphonic world that it's not really who this band is. This band needs to be more guitar-centric, vocal-centric, which is exactly what they did on this record, and it's exactly what this song represents. Great solo section, outstanding solo section, enhancing the beauty of the song, enhancing the power of the song, and really emphasizing how important the guitars are, not just on this entire record, but specifically on this song in terms of the energy that they give and the ebbs and flows that they create. Next we have Until the End, a more stripped down, vocal, earthy, almost folky opening to this song. This is the great attribute of this record. Every song starts so different from one another, and then they go down a similar path, sounding similar to one another, but still a different imagery around you. Really interesting, and it comes together so well in this track, and you see it so well play out in front of you because of the way it starts, how emotionally driven it is, how naked it feels when you're listening to it. And then you start to see the power coming in. You start to see the other elements coming in, the guitars coming in, the drums coming in, everything creating more volume, everything creating more substance, making a song a lot stronger, a lot bigger, but still keeping those melodic undertones that are really important. It almost feels like there's two different waves of sound, one that's carrying the song forward and one that's allowing you to just kind of float in it. Making a more textured, more layered track all around, more interesting song all around, offering some technical elements in the sound, but vocally and musically, it's a song that comes together extremely well. Last but not least, Far Away, which is actually the last song on the record, a song that builds itself into it. It allows you to take the proper steps as you start listening to it. It doesn't rush. It doesn't have this pedal to the metal beginning and then slows down. It doesn't have this slow start and then it builds up. It's a track that has gradual movement to it. It builds, but it builds gradually, and it never really dips. It just keeps building. It's not always in a drastic way. It's in a more sustainable way. It's a song that has sustainable growth from beginning all the way to the end, but you could feel like the track blossoms. At times the tempos pick up. It's a song that has still a very direct approach, because while it's growing, it's still moving in a very linear direction. You know exactly where the song is trying to take you, and you're going for the ride. Very melodic, great sound all around, creating dynamic movements in their growth, not necessarily dynamic movements by having a track that has these incredible ebbs and flows and constantly changing from verses to chorus. It's not the case, but it's dynamic nevertheless. It's just dynamic in the way it moves forward and the way it moves upwards. Great versatility as far as the sound and how the sound elements interact with one another. The way the two guitar players work this track is really interesting. The way they blend in with the drums and use the drums to separate themselves and to unify themselves is really interesting. Adding acoustic guitars into this track allows for a more stripped down moment, perhaps the biggest dip that the song has. But when you're so involved in a song like this, a song that has growth, even though that acoustic sound may feel like the rug is being pulled from under you, it just actually comes across as the next evolution in the sound experience. It's just an evolution that has a little bit less than what it came before it. Really interesting track sound-wise, really interesting track vocally, a song that could only come at the end of the record because of its dynamics, because of the way it's built. It's a track that has a sense of ending, it has a sense of closure. And when you're building an album like this, an album that has a lot of similarities, but it builds up on how the starting points are changing, a song like this becomes the perfect curtain closer, the perfect end, roll the end credits of any record. Great song, finishing the record on a very strong and high note. This is it, Frozen Crown with Call of the North, out March 10th on Scarlet Records. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. Use the comment section below. I'll be reading those and getting back to you. Take care, guys.